if we look at the decade that is our 20s as if it was one day,
Sure.
and then we apply that day to both of us, you are definitely getting past sunset.
Thank you.
That's okay. I'm sitting at around midday. So I'm currently smack bang in the middle of my 20s and you're right at the end. So we've had discussions before about what your 20s is about. And you've said to me pretty firmly from your experience that your 20s is about making mistakes and kind of
Learning,
misstepping a lot and figuring out from sort of through trial and error, a bit of research and development, what the rest of your life is kind of going to be like.
Yeah.
Sort of like the foundation of the rest of your life is sort of begins with your 20s. Does that sort of sum up your position with it?
Yeah. I guess, like, growing up, I was always told your 20s are about making mistakes and learning. But when you begin your 20s, you want to get everything right. And I find that you should know exactly where you're going after high school and uni. You should know exactly what you need to do, and then you're doing it already.
Yeah.
Whereas when I was getting probably to like the 25 mark, age 25, I was like, nothing's really happening. The things that I thought I wanted and the things that I wanted to be are just not happening. And it's, I don't know, I was making a lot of mistakes, which are not mistakes. But over the next couple of years after that, till I was 27, I realized I'm allowed to make mistakes. I'm allowed to not know exactly what it is that I have to do for the rest of my life. There was a lot of pressure around that, and I think it is anyway. When after school you go straight into uni to something that you should be doing or you want to do, and you're expected to do that for the rest of your life. Whereas I didn't know what I wanted to do after high school or in uni, and then after that I was like, I still don't know, and I was freaking out. So it was just a constant freak out of not knowing who I was, and that's probably what perpetuated my search for purpose and meaning. So
it kind of began out of the later years of your 20s.
I think, yeah. I started to comprehend what it really meant to be on that journey of self-development, of self-discovery. Mid-20s.
When it started at 27, you said that's when you sort of really clued on to the fact that you don't have to have it all figured out. What was it about that time? What did you experience that opened you up to that?
I think it was the relationships that I was having. I think they showed me a lot of who I could be and who I wanted to be and how I wanted to be treated. And even the jobs that I had at the time, they were like retail, hospitality, things that were kind of the same over and over, that I was like, I just want something different. I couldn't stay in a job longer than a year. I couldn't hold on to a relationship longer than maybe like between 3 to 6 months. Yeah. I really struggled to hold, because I needed something, I just didn't know what it was, but I needed to understand myself and what I really wanted. After those jobs and after those relationships, or whatever you'd want to call them, I learned a lot about myself, reflecting back on how I was, what would make, like what they taught me, and even just that process of going back and like knowing what my lessons were and understanding what was actually going on helped me to discover, life is about learning.
Yes. Yeah.
I get it now, kind of. Just, it was this beginning of that. I'm like, all right, okay, well, keep going. And then I started to explore myself, but not in a way that like you go to the mountaintops and meditate. It was like I really want to search about what I like doing. And I just delved slowly into things, and even standing up for myself in relationships was like, oh, that was different, because I'm not usually one to be firm about what I want. But that taught me that I'm allowed to speak for myself. I didn't have to have it all figured out. Yeah. I didn't have to have someone telling me. So that makes sense.
Even in that, did you establish that sort of in that moment when you were defending yourself, was there something that clicked that made you realise, I'm my own person, it's not for you to tell me what to do or how to do it? Was there finally sort of some kind of fire that lit in you that was like, hang on, I'm in control?
Yes. It was that, like, yes and no. So most of it was, I actually can stand up for myself. I'm actually able to do that. I don't need to wait for someone to do it for me. So it was more about my personal standing up for myself rather than it be about what someone says they want for me, or what what they want from me and what they want me to be.
Like someone's expectation of you.
Yeah. I think it was more so, I realised I actually can move toward what I actually want in my life. I can actually choose what it is that I want in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're definitely like under the weight of very many expectations. And it's not intentional, obviously,
No.
but I think whether you like it or not, you have expectations of somebody else and other people have expectations of you.
Yeah.
And that's
it's
not
always going to be the case.
Yeah, it's not something that's supposed to be detrimental. It's something that's unconscious. I wouldn't even say subconscious. It's an unconscious thing.
Yeah.
Because if you have a particular like position within a group, then people are going to have an expectation of how you are in that group, what your purpose in that group is. Like within your friendship group, you can say, oh, that person's the shy one, that person's the quiet one, that person's the loud one, that person's the funny one, that one's the deep one.
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of got a role to play. And then so with that role, there is a certain expectation that comes along with it. And so when you start to step outside of that, or things, I don't know, cracks start to open up and you expand your worldview and you expand your horizons a little bit, it takes people by surprise and breaks those expectations down.
Yeah, and that happens. It happens when you really want something and there's a realization when you're like, I'm going to be seen different. I'm going to be treated differently. And it's a really hard thing to overcome because I'm still overcoming it because it's still happening. It doesn't just happen in one day. It happens over a course of a period of time. So it is probably one of the hardest things because I've grown up with a lot of the people around me and all they've known is that version of me. Then 2020 happened and I didn't see anyone for a year, and so much happened in that year where I actually saw myself and connected with myself. And it was in that time I'm like, shit, like I'm going to be seen differently because of what I am now, or what I've discovered now about myself and what I can do. Not that I won't be supported, but I will be seen differently. Whether it's a good thing or bad thing, it doesn't matter. I will be seen differently. Or
you feel different, and so when you go and re-engage with people who you already have a relationship with, but you're coming at it from a different worldview for yourself personally, then you won't be seen differently. You are different being seen as the same person that you once were.
Oh, yeah, I could say that too.
So that's probably jarring. Like you've changed, but you're going back into a social situation where there's already a more fixed view of who you are and what you're about.
Yeah, all right.
Because I can relate to that. I feel the same thing too. And it's really difficult, especially with family, because you grow up with family. It's not anyone's fault. It's you just, when you get so used to someone's personality and how somebody works, when you spend so much time with them, it's very difficult to see them in any other light. Yeah. Like my brother, he's 21. Yeah. I'm always going to see him as a little 8-year-old with a high-pitched voice that was, half the size of me, and he's taller than me, and and he's got a much deeper voice now, but I'll always see him as that, like physically, it's not something that is a conscious thing of mine. It's not something I'm doing to try and put him down. Like he's switched on. He's a smart guy. Like we've had some very good conversations. I love spending time with him and talking about deeper things. It's just one of those subconscious things that it's because you just are so used to spending so much time with someone and getting to know them in a particular way. It's actually hard to shake that. And it's not something that is conscious in anybody trying to suppress anybody from trying to be different. Yeah, no. It's just like conditioning. Yeah. It's like you become conditioned or used to seeing someone in a certain way. Yeah. And so like, if you spend time away, like when you move away from family, obviously your life completely changes. Yeah. And, a lot of the time you can relate to each other from those changes because you've stepped outside of family life, and so has a lot of our siblings. Everyone's gone their separate ways, sort of thing. Yeah. So we've all gone through a similar shift in our life positions. Like we've all moved out, so we're experiencing what it's like to live by ourselves and be self-sufficient, independent in that. So we can relate on that point of view. But we've also in getting our own space and our own time away from that familiar environment, it's given us sort of time and the space to be able to spread our wings and go our own ways a little bit too, like philosophically and what we learn and what we experience and what we do. Well, you're
in a different environment, so of course the different environment is going to impact you and shape you.
Yes.
Again, it's the longer you spend in that environment, the more familiar that's going to be, and the more unfamiliar the previous environment is going to be.
Yeah.
So when you go back to it, you kind of have to, although it depends how familiar it is to it and how much you're holding on to it. Because you can go back and just be that same version of you.
You can slot back into that expectation or that role that you played originally.
Yeah.
And so, like, because here's the problem with that. Like, that's a great thing, you know, everyone needs to develop personally. But because you're in your own little world and everyone's gone off into their own little worlds, your self-development, no one else is privy to.
Yeah.
So you change and you develop as a person, and then when you go back into those situations,
you're different.
You're different, but no one else has seen how and why you're different.
Yeah.
So they treat you the same way that you were treated, or you talk about the same things, and it's like, I'm not interested in this anymore.
Yeah.
But how do you know, it's difficult to be able to broach that.
I don't think that's an uncommon thing. I think a lot of people go through that. People can relate to that, I think. As I was talking to a client today, and we were talking about this exact thing. She goes, it's really hard because we have nothing in common anymore. Like her high school best friend, she was like, we were so close, but we've gone our separate ways. But it's like no one's saying anything. It's just this quiet, I know. Yeah. I know that we're not as close as we once were and that we're ever going to be. And it's like, how do you break that tie? How do you break that cord? Do you say something, or do you just allow it to pass?
Because he's like, the difficult thing with that is that, yeah, you know, you kind of hope that you're on the same page to the extent that you've both moved on. Like, you've both gone off and pursued your own journeys, and so you've both developed, and that relationship that you once shared no longer needs to fulfill a particular purpose. You don't need that person to play that role in your life anymore. Yeah. And, you know, it's the same for both people involved. So you kind of hope that's a mutual thing, so that you can both just come away and that's all right. There doesn't need to be some kind of formal conclusion to the relationship, you know.
Because it doesn't always need to be a formal conclusion. It's just an acceptance that things have changed. And, you know, over the course of 2020, everyone's life would have changed in some way, shape or form. And it's just about embracing it rather than saying, oh, you're not for me anymore. It's just about understanding that we all had it hard. How was yours more difficult? Or how was your 2020 for you? How was your experience? I want to know about it and being curious, because that's how we grow and develop together in a relationship. But it is really hard to talk about it because, you know, I was in a very unique position to the people around me. No one lost their jobs. I was probably one of the only ones that really lost my job. So no one could really relate to me in that time. So of course I had like a lot of time on my own. So I wasn't with anyone. No one saw my progress except you.
Yeah.
So we were together.
Yeah, most definitely. It makes it really difficult, as I was saying, to then come back to those relationships at the conclusion of 2020, because, you know, we can move around a bit again, and then you find yourself in a completely different frame of mind going back to the same place.
I get nervous. Do you get nervous? I mean, you've been with people, so it's a bit different.
I think, yeah, it's different, because I can understand how you're nervous because you've redeveloped the way you look at the world and the way that you think. So you get sort of nervous at, like, I want to express who I now am and what I now feel and what I now believe, but I don't know if I'm going back into an environment that's going to let me do that.
Yeah.
But then there's also, for you, like, socialising.
That's it. I haven't socialised. Even going down to the library the other day. Yeah. Like, I can go to the supermarket, that's why I don't just talk to anyone. But going to the library, and even though no one talks to you, it's like still a different environment. So I sat down and I was just looking around. I'm like, okay, this is different. And then, you know, I went home. But it still triggers me a little bit, like going into a new environment like that.
Yeah, it was definitely traumatic.
Yeah.
We've digressed a bit from the point. So I look at you now in the position that you're in, and
what's that? What's my position?
Okay, well, here's my perspective, right? So you're 4 years older than me.
Yes.
So I know it's not a huge period of time in the big scheme of things, but it is still a significant amount of time in regards to life experience.
Surprisingly, there is a large gap, yes.
There is, like, and there's some aspects where it feels a lot narrower, but there's some points where you can tell we're miles apart.
Like music and film. Drives me crazy.
I see, because we've been together for nearly 3 years, so I've seen your journey for the last 3 years and your growth and how you're different now to when we first met. But I see you now also at the end of your 20s, and so much of your life obviously was lived, without me being privy to it.
Yeah.
And so I see where you've arrived now, with theatre, with the business that you're starting, and I'm a part of it, which is great. But it's kind of you're in the box seat for it at the moment. You've got something that you're really passionate about, and it's something that you want to continue learning and developing, and you're so excited to take on clients and bring people in and learn on the job, like learn on the go.
Yeah.
I'll probably just divert a little bit, like just on that same thought. The reason I admire that so much is when I went to uni, I studied osteo. I went through the whole sort of first 3 years just thinking, it's okay, I'll really enjoy it once we start applying the theory that we're learning to the real world, to actual clients. So that was kind of my main mindset when it came to my studies. Was it's all right, I'll enjoy it when I start applying it. And so just blindly thinking that, I went through into 4th and 5th year, and in those years, that's when you get into the clinic and you start treating real patients.
Yeah, right.
So I was so nervous every time I was about to have someone walk into the treatment room, and I had to take charge with them.
That?
I wasn't ready for it. I think, like I said, I'd gone through the entire previous 3 years not being engaged in what I was doing. I was simply going through the motions and just passing and doing what I had to do. I mean, I did well in uni. I never failed.
Did you enjoy it?
Not really. Yeah. No, not really. And that's a whole conversation. We can get into it here too. But I went through it kind of, like I said, with it in the back of my mind that I'll start enjoying it in 4th and 5th year. And so that whole mentality was like me pushing. It was like me pushing the passion for further down the track. Yeah. It's kind of me justifying not being like happy or fulfilled.
Yeah, right.
And I was spending so much of my time in uni or in these classes and studying and whatnot. And I was almost justifying it by saying, it's okay, there's some point in the future that I will actually like this. So I just have to make a little sacrifice now and it'll pay off later. And so by the time I actually got to that future point that I'd been deferring to, nothing changed. And so I didn't have a passion for it. Mm-hmm. I'd learned all the theory. Like, don't get me wrong, I still learnt a lot and I still knew how to treat and what to do, but the passion wasn't there.
I feel like you've remembered everything.
Yeah.
Like, because the way you talk, you're just like, oh yeah, that's this and this, like all the body parts.
I retain information, but
it's insane.
It's the passion though, the passion that I was missing.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was deferring my passion. I was constantly deferring it, putting it off. And I think along with that also was, because I didn't have passion for it, I also didn't really want to take responsibility for it. Does that make sense? Like when you love something, when something means so much and you know it and you just want to do it and that's all you want to do, then you'll happily do whatever it takes to grab it, make it your own and go forth and apply it in any sort of situation.
Yes. And
that's, I've learned that through, as I continue to read and to experience more, learn more, that's kind of what has started to make itself clear to me.
Sure.
But when I was at uni, I was simply learning things because I had to learn things. And there was no passion there. There was no fire in me that made me want to apply what I was learning and actually work in the field that I was studying.
Yeah, right.
It was really frustrating. And so by the time I actually got to student clinic and I had people lining up outside the treatment room, I was shitting myself. I was so nervous. I was terrified of actually treating.
Well, because it was still in the future for you.
It was like still
that passion that you were expecting was still in the future because you didn't want it anyway. Otherwise, you would have been passionate about it then in second year and third year.
Well, yeah, exactly. I would have walked in there and loved it from day dot, or at the very least had the drive.
Yeah.
What was driving me wasn't the enjoyment or the love of it. It was the fact that I had to do it. Because if I didn't do it, I'd fail. And if I flunked out, then what would I do?
Yeah.
That was
no other
what was driving me through.
There was no other option.
It didn't feel like there was.
Yeah.
So that being said, when I was actually had patients that were coming into wanting treatment, I'd be really nervous and I wasn't passionate at all about it. I just do what I had to do. I was like, don't get me wrong, I still had good outcomes. I wasn't a shit student. I wasn't a terrible osteo. Student. I could still do it all, but the passion wasn't there. I think that's the point I'm trying to get at.
So you can learn everything, you knew everything, you know exactly how to do it, and you were very good at it.
There was a number quota. So in order to pass the clinic unit of the course, you had to achieve 200 numbers. And so every time you had a new patient, so someone who hadn't come to the clinic before, it was worth 2. And every time you had a return, so someone who you have seen before, they come back and see you again, that's worth 1.
Sure.
So I went to India as a way of bolstering those numbers. So
Can you explain why you went to India? It was just randomly go to India to treat me.
That's true. So the university had a partnership with hospitals in India.
There you go.
And so we'd go to the trip was supposed to be 2 weeks in Goa, in hospital in Goa, and 2 weeks in Mumbai.
Yeah.
When the time rolled around when I finally put my hand up and said, yes, I'll go to this course. I'll go along with this. The reason that I did it was because I was very low. I was really short on numbers and I really needed to get those numbers. So I'm like, okay, I kind of have no choice but to do this. I was actually initially, there's so much in this there as I'm like thinking about it. As I was applying and just doing it, the main driving force for that was because if I didn't do this, I wasn't going to get enough numbers and I wouldn't actually be able to pass uni. So that was the driving force behind me saying, yep, okay, I'll go, because it was optional. And it was the best thing I ever did. And it had nothing to do with uni.
Yeah.
I ended up getting the numbers that I needed, but it was the experience and seeing, like, I loved it. Every minute of it outside of the clinic. Because again, even when I was treating people in India, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be there doing that. I wanted to be out and just experiencing new things and sights. I know you went overseas and the experience that you had exploring and seeing new things and learning a bit more about a different culture, that was something that really showed itself as a valuable experience to you.
Yeah.
So when I was over there, that's what really resonated with me. And so anyway, I came back and every person that you treated in India was worth 2 as well.
Sure.
So I ended up getting to that 200. And my last clinic session, I actually had like three patients lined up. It's going to sound so bad. I pretty much refused to treat them. I handballed them off, and I used the excuse
because you already had 200.
I already had my 200 numbers, so I used the reason that because 5th years and 4th years they both worked side by side.
Yep.
And so I said, I'll palm off my patients to 4th years so that they can get their numbers up.
Yeah.
So it was a valid reason. Obviously, it's a valid reason. It seems altruistic, but the real reason was because I was just done. I had done what I needed to do, and I was done. I was out of there.
But also, you could even look at it as you knew that they needed their numbers too. You'd give that, but you weren't passionate about it, so you wouldn't really be doing a service for the clients that are actually coming in.
No, I mean, no. Ultimately, I'd sit there throwing theory at them.
Yeah.
And applying what I had learnt
read.
Practically and read. Nothing. There was no drive to make it my own, really. Like, I had ideas. I'm like, this is okay. So if I'm going to be an osteo, I have to be an osteo. What about it do I like? What areas do I like? And so that's. I was looking at my prospects from the position, not of I love this and I just want to get into it and rip it apart. I was like, okay, I succumb to the idea that this is my lot in life, so I better find something about it that I like. So yeah, no, so it never really worked. It was never gonna work. It was always destined to fail. And again, I want to really stress that this is me as an individual, explaining like my position, my point of view from where I was at that point in time with osteo. It's not anything against the profession or against that industry or anything at all. This was just if I even now was to say, all right, I'm going to go back and do osteo, I'd be so much more prepared now. But that's neither here nor there at this point. The point I'm making anyways is I didn't have the passion and I was so nervous every single time that there was someone there for me to work with. But when I look at you and I see the passion that you have and what you are really just doing with that passion and that drive, you have everything that I didn't have. And I respect and I admire that so much Because I know when I was in the position that you're in, where I was nervous, you're more excited. You're more curious. You're ready to go forth and make this your own and see what you're actually capable of. I was terrified to see what I was capable of.
Oh, the fear's still there. I'm still terrified. But yeah, there's more excitement this time round. But you got to know, this took a long time. This was something in the making since I was 22.
Yeah.
23. It began there. I knew I was going to be some sort of healer. I really admired, like, there was something about, like, going overseas and having that experience and then moving probably through, it was maybe about 23, 24, where I was like, oh, I want to be this and I want to be that and I want to be a yoga teacher and I want to be this, and none of that came into fruition because there's a process and it wasn't for me. I should have just been doing it as a hobby, but everything, I grasped onto everything because I thought that's what I wanted to be. And then, like, I had my, like, these moments where I'm not passionate enough. I loved yoga and I loved how it felt and I loved its the teachings and everything, and that was a part of it, but it wasn't for me. I wasn't meant to be a yoga teacher. There was something more for me. And there was so many things in my 20s. That's what I was saying. Like, I've just gotten to where I thought I was going to be at 25, at 29. And I know that for people that are older are going to be like, oh my God, like you are so lucky to have found your passion at 29. But I'm like, I still had a journey and I've still got a journey ahead of me.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going to happen. You know, I can guarantee that this isn't going to be that flowing. It's not going to flow as beautifully as I think it's going to feel. It's going to be really hard. But the difference now with knowing that and where I am now is I'm actually excited to learn through that process. Whereas before, I'm like, I just don't want that. I want it to be perfect. I want everything to be perfect. I want my website to be perfect and my work to be perfect. And I'd be organizing things and setting things up so perfectly without even learning or actually doing the work perfectly. And there's so much to it. So it took me a while. There is still a process. You're still further ahead than I was at 25. Like in my comparison, in my view, like you're more aware and you're more conscious. You're very intelligent. You have this isn't just like, you know, we're talking about each other. But there are so many things about you that you do have it, and it's what I forgot at 25 was seeing what I actually had for me, what I had going for me, and enjoying the process of making mistakes, doing this kind of job and that kind of job, and learning from them. That's
something that I remember having some specific discussions, and you changed your tune. It just came to me now with you saying that. I remember we were together a couple of years ago, and you said that you feel like you failed because it's too late for you to do anything noteworthy.
There you go.
And that was a couple of years ago. So you were even younger. I remember that. And now you're saying that you're so blessed to have been able to find it, and that's what your 20s was about.
Yeah.
What's the difference? What's changed in order for you to change that point of view?
Experience, I guess, or time. Like, I'm pretty grateful for the year that we had in 2020. That probably had a massive, it shifted me and my perspective on who I was, who I am, and what I want to do, and even just on life in general. Like, I don't know. I was thinking I was on my own. 24 hours a day, not 24 hours, but I was like on my own for a big period of the day.
Yeah.
And I had a lot to think about. I was constantly thinking. I had my ups, I had my downs, I had my ups, I had my downs. It was madness. It was a roller coaster.
Yeah.
But through that roller coaster, I learned so much about what I could actually do. Like and what my life would, I don't know, I can't really explain it. It's just, it was that time. I was patient. I think I really learned how to be patient with my purpose because I wanted it, but I couldn't reach out for it in desperation. Otherwise it wasn't working, because it's like, it's here for you. But there's things that you need first in order to grasp it. You can't have it right now because you don't have the experience. Who would want a healer at 22?
Correct, yeah.
Who would want to see a counsellor at 24, a 24-year-old counsellor? I don't think anyone would. No one's had that much experience.
I completely agree with that. Having gone through it, I was straight out of high school. I went into uni, and when you're in a situation,
this also isn't against anyone who is 24.
Oh no, of course not. No, of course not.
This is just my personal.
This is my personal experience and my thoughts on it. Just stepping back and trying to look at things objectively.
Yeah.
When you're in a situation where you're working with a client or with a patient, especially in a position of superiority, in the sense that I'm the medical or the healthcare practitioner, so I have a sense of I have a superiority over you because I'm telling you what to do. I'm telling you what's wrong with you. I'm telling you how we're gonna deal with it. There's an asymmetry of power in that situation.
Yeah.
You should have a level of life experience, in my opinion, when it comes to situations like that.
But I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew I couldn't be a counselor or a healer or even a yoga teacher at the age that I was. Not because of my age. It was actually just the experience. I had no experience in any of that.
Yeah.
I just started it, got really excited and passionate, and then wanted to make it a career because it felt so good and I was reaching for my purpose. That was my experience. Like, I was reaching in desperation for trying. I'm like, that's my purpose. Oh no, that's my purpose. Oh no, that's my purpose. Oh no. And I was just like... too excited. Whereas if I had just peacefully applied all the practices, I would have mastered something through that process, which I haven't mastered anything yet. I learnt patience, and I learnt faith and trust and all these other virtues that just had that kind of evolved or unfolded.
Right.
Up until this point.
So there's a couple.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about. One of them, just going back. I'm terrible at writing. I have a notebook here that is supposed to be covered with my notes.
This is episode 16. Oh, these are your notes from episode 14.
Yeah, I'm terrible. I always start off with the intention. Yeah, I'll write notes down as I go, but I just get too into what we're saying, and I just end up with a blank page. So. With the experience, what I found from my personal experience was that when you don't have any life experience to draw upon...
What's life experience?
Time, like the time...
Time. It's
time. It really is time. And, when you've got that time to just go through and to experience different situations and learn things and fill your time with something valuable and gain the knowledge from whatever it is that you're doing. It just deepens your worldview, it deepens your perspective and your understanding so that you have a better idea of what you want to do and what you're about and who you are. When you're in your early 20s, for me personally, I was nowhere near that. I was an immature kid out of high school that just cared more about going out and drinking, getting pissed with mates, and that was that. We'd come and do uni because I had to do schooling, because schooling's the right way to do something, and that's the key. That's what's going to get you rich and wealthy and comfortable and satisfied in life.
Look at us now.
But that to me, that's the point. That's the point where I was at, right? And so, if I think about it, when you're straight out of high school like that as an 18-year-old, and then you spend the next 5 years of your life remaining in that education system, learning things, and then going out into the real world, you stepping out into, let's say, the real world, but you're stepping outside of that education bubble.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, you're sort of kept separate from what the big wide world is like when you're being educated, because your life is about studying and focus and learn this and manage your time so that and your priorities so that you can balance your social life, going out and drinking and spending time with friends and your uni and your family, and if you've got a part-time job, which I worked at Woolies the whole way through. So that's a very different bubble to being out in the workforce on your own, making your own decisions and living your own life. That is something that you're not properly prepared for when you're being educated. And I have my own thoughts on how things should work, or not how things should work, because I don't know. I don't have any conclusions, but
it's from your experience.
From my experience, right?
What works and what doesn't work.
All I had when I graduated was book knowledge. So I'm coming at someone's health and someone's life with no life experience of my own. All I had was what I learned in the books. And so I can just regurgitate facts and knowledge and information, to someone that I'm working with, And that's all I had. It wasn't shaped by any particular worldview. It wasn't shaped by any deeper understanding of myself and what actually resonates with me. And so it was hollow. Like there was no substance or passion or anything supporting the information that I had in my head.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It probably sounds redundant. Like I know it's my position. It's not everyone's position. But it's become really important to me to actually have some kind of substructure for what it is that I'm doing, because otherwise I'm just going to be going forth into what I'm doing with basically knowledge from a book and no knowledge from the work. And that, I think, is crucial. Like I said, particularly in a situation where there is an asymmetry of power between the practitioner and the patient. And so I think that life experience is crucial. And like you said yourself, who's going to want to receive counselling from someone half their age? Yeah. You know, if someone's 20 versus if someone's 40. Yeah. You know,
because I know that I wanted an older counsellor when I was 23. I don't know what I could have gained from someone my own age, because I'm like, I need experience. I want not an authority, but someone who has been through something and understands something so much so that it's been 10, 15 years of their life at least. I grew up around older people. I grew up around younger people, and of course I'm going to listen to someone who's older and who has had experience and who's had jobs and who's had depression and who's had all of that and worked through it.
Yeah.
Rather than opposed to someone who doesn't understand, has no idea.
Well, because the difference would be, okay, so from what I've read about depression, these are the symptoms of depression. And so because we know what the symptoms are, okay, let's open this book up. Okay, and so this is how we're going to treat those symptoms. Yeah. That's what you get. As opposed to someone who's, okay, I've had experiences with people like this in my life, and also maybe personal experience on what happened. I can relate to you on a deeper level. And it's not, obviously you're not going to have experienced absolutely everything there is to experience, but it's just experience just more. Yeah. Just more, and build a stronger foundation for yourself.
And that's why like some practitioners have their own niche. And I love that. I love that they're specific to something, because then those people that have, if they're working with depression because they've had depression and they've worked through it and they've understood it, I would want to go to them and like, how did you get through it? So like for me, I actually can't remember if my counsellor had depression or anything, but she steered me in the right direction. And she did it in a way that she wasn't judging me. She was giving me the right tools. She was listening. I think the listening part was really important for me. Whereas I was always like, when I was growing up, those that were older, oh, you're a baby, you've got so much time ahead of you. Oh, you're going to figure this out. I'm like, I need help now. Yeah. I need guidance now. And I didn't know that at the time. I was like, okay, I'll wait. Okay, I'll wait. All right, I'll wait. And then, I'm 25, I'm waiting still. I'm like, okay, I can't wait anymore because I'm the one who has to make this happen. I'm the one who's responsible for my life. I'm the one who gets to choose, essentially, even if I want to do this project, if I don't want to do this project, or I want to do this course and not do this course, have this job or not have this job. I can choose. And I think I understood that like even after my mid 20s, like 27, like probably when we began dating, because you shook my world in a really great way. I wasn't very structured in my thinking. I was floating. I was very creative, so everything was everywhere. My life was a mess. I'm not going to call it a mess, but it was unorganized. Whereas you come in all structured with all your binders and you.
Oh, I'm not the binder person.
No, but that's I'm just like, well, that's what I meant. But no, in the sense that you were organized. You knew who you wanted to be, or at least you were focused. Like your focus on things was incredible, and the way you moved on after just anything. Like when you'd have a bit of an argument, or if you had just a conversation, you could just move on. And I was like, oh, whereas before I'd like hold on to emotions and hold on to the feelings of things and everything, I'd just keep it all inside me. So it trained me out of that and began to like balance a little bit of, I'm like, oh, okay, so now I can actually choose what books to read, not to actually just like read it because someone else has told me to read it. Yeah. Because then just to say that I've read it, I want to understand it. Like you sought to understand what you were reading, and I've never been around that, because when I was Like my friends in high school, they were they were smart. They just read and understood it, and that was it. And I'm like, why can't I read this and understand it? Like, I really struggled with that. But watching you and your process, I was like, oh, that's how he does it. I'm like, I want to try that. I'm going to try really understand what each word and what the sentence is really. Like, look at the sentence again. What does it mean to me and my perspective, and what is my perspective? And then obviously I went down a philosophical rabbit hole and nearly set me to depression again. But I got, but it shook the way I was, or the way I was conditioned.
That's what that does. As soon as you start to ask those sort of questions and think a little bit deeper, once you can do that and break that, it makes you so uncomfortable. And the reason it sends you down that, it's not depression, but it just throws your emotions into chaos, is because it shakes up your entire construct of what you've believed to be true up until this point. And as soon as you start to question your own foundation, you throw yourself completely.
I was like, oh my gosh, who am I? It's a very fascinating experience.
Yeah.
But yeah.
This is what's interesting though. So there's a difference obviously between what you experience and what shapes you and helps to create who you are, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So obviously if you're going to go through a certain situation, then you're going to take something from that, and that's going to help develop you or shape you going forward, whether in a good or a bad way. And same for me, I'll go through other things too, and that'll shape me as well. So you can say, if you contrast our experiences, then you can be like, okay, I can understand why there's potential differences, especially if you just go, when you're 25 versus where I am now, you'd experience something different to what I've experienced. So I'm going to be at a particular point, you're going to be at a particular point. So you can say that, yeah, we're definitely shaped by the experiences that we've had. Yeah. But also probably even just maturity and just that life experience that we're talking about also makes things different. We've walked a different path, so we're at different places. Yeah. But I think overall, when I look at where you're at, you're ready to move into something. Yeah. And I'm not. And I don't know if that's something that is necessarily shaped, is something a specific experience can give you, or if it's simply time. If, maybe by the time I'm your age now, maybe by the time I'm in my late 20s going into 30, I'll be at a place where I'm confident and I'm like, I know exactly what it is that I want to do going forward. I don't know where that is yet. And I don't know if that's something that experience can give you. It is. Because like I said, I look at you and I see where you're at. And you got that confidence and that desire and that drive. And I just don't have that at this point. And I just want to make very clear, I'm talking about myself. I'm not generalizing any of this.
No, this is just you and me talking, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Of course it's just me and you talking. And anybody listening. I hate being spoken for, and I don't want to feel like it's for anyone else thinks that I'm speaking for them. So this is just from my personal experience, because like I said, we've gone through different things. And that shapes us. But how much does it shape us? Because
I've had that feeling all my 20s. Do you know how frustrating it is to have it for nearly a decade? So you're saying I've got 4 or 5 years of this? No, but the thing is, what I'm saying is you're more aware. You at least know that you want something. When you know and you're patient, like you have my experience, so you might get there next year. Like, we don't know that. You don't know that. It depends, like, what you invite. Like free will. We've got free will how to choose, right? If you take every experience as it is and you learn from it, you're going to learn faster and you're going to get there quicker when you accept that this is the process. It took 2020 for me to slow down and to be ready for this. Yeah. It came at the end of 2020. It didn't come in the middle. It didn't come at the start. At the start, I thought I was like, oh my God, yeah, okay. So I'm ready to do this work because I've been... let go of my job. So now I can actually apply what I've been talking about for the last 6 years. But I was like, oh, okay. So when I sat down and tried to do it, I wasn't ready. I'm like, oh my God, this is really difficult. Forgetting that, like, what was actually going on in the world, forgetting that I was isolated, forgetting that I couldn't actually do anything, forgetting that I couldn't see my family, and all of those, that experience that I needed in order to have what I got and what I received at the end, which was theatre. And that's just one part of what I want to be doing. But that's enough for me, because I'm like, it taps into infinite potential. And I've always loved the idea of infinite potential, but I didn't really know what that meant. Infinite possibility, sorry. Never understood. I love the word infinite. I just didn't really understand what it was.
Because that's I'm sort of in a similar position to that, where I love, because I read a lot and I take on a lot of information.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that even I've developed for myself, ideas and philosophies. I love the sound of it, and I love it makes sense to me. It logically it clicks with me. So because it resonates like that, I kind of take it and I'm like, this is a really important part of what I believe, and it's part of my foundation. But then when it comes to actually implementing it and applying it in a practical sense in my life, it's quite difficult because I haven't gone through anything necessarily that's tested that. So it's almost nerve-wracking to be like, all right, I'm going to put my ideas to the test, and what if it doesn't stand the test of whatever it is that I'm going to go through?
What would happen?
I would have to just go back to the drawing board.
That's it.
But that's what I established with attachment, is that you can't be attached to any particular ideas that you have. Because if you let them control you, then you will go down with those ideas once they've been undermined. And
that's what you learn. Like, the way you're thinking now, it's very wise and mature for someone at 25. Having been 25 and just now just comprehending what you learnt a year ago. So even when you were 24, like, you have a lot that I didn't have. And that's just, we're just comparing because I'm trying to make you feel better.
Thanks.
But no, I'm just comprehending now all the questions you were asking a year ago. Do you understand? So for me being a year late to that, that's something in itself.
But then we can even say, even argue that you had to go through 2020 in order to position yourself to be able to comprehend that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but you experienced it the year before.
So nominally, yes, you're late to the party. But no, you had to go through some real experience. I had a precipitating experience that forced me down a particular route. I was also, however, if I get my bloody mum on the podcast at one point to talk about what I was like growing up, I always had that tendency to ask why and to question and to challenge. As I said in the last episode, she said I've always been controversial and, I need to stop fighting. And that's her perspective. I'm like, I don't want to actually lose that questioning, that inquisitiveness, that challenging nature that I have.
No, because that's going to get you to where you want to be.
Yeah. It's harnessing it for my
You know that.
benefit.
So you're further along than I am.
But this is so something else that I, just through the course of this conversation, to get to the point where you're at now, you needed 2020 to happen the way it did. Mm-hmm. So if I just step back and look at it like it's in a vacuum, you're in a position now where you've found your passion and you're going somewhere that you're very much in conscious control of, and you're very excited and keen for it. There's a fire in you for it.
Yes.
And so I guess what I've been trying to allude to throughout this sort of conversation is that is something potentially that could be a result of just the life experience of having gone through your 20s. And now at the end of your 20s, you've had the experience that you need in order to get to this point.
Yes.
But you needed that experience to be sequenced exactly as it was in order for you to get here.
Absolutely.
So you weren't necessarily going to have found your passion and found what it is that you're good at and what you love doing in 2020 or at the end of your 20s.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily going to find my passion at the end of my 20s. So it's just funny how you still have a fortunate, if you can take the experiences that are generated and you see what is in them that you can take away from them that's beneficial to you, then you get to actually be aware of how you're changing and how you're developing and what you can take from those situations to help you move forward. And I guess that's what you ultimately did unconsciously initially, but then consciously once you started figuring out some things for yourself and some truths for yourself. So if 2020 hadn't have happened for you, you probably wouldn't be in this position now.
Absolutely not. But I also asked for experience.
You did.
And I literally asked for it years ago. And through that time I did. I got it all. I got all the experience I wanted. But experience takes challenge and trauma and experience, especially when you want to be someone who helps people through their problems. You got to deal with problems.
Yeah.
So that's going to be my experience. So I haven't. Yes, when things happen, I get angry, I get pissed and frustrated. Of course, and anyone would. That's just a natural state. That's just a natural emotion to feel when things go shit, and when they don't go the right way or the way they planned. But I've actually appreciated them at the same time. I'm like, I know I need this. I know that I've needed to be on my own for this amount of time. I know that I've had to actually be separate from my family and the people that I've known because I won't find myself in this familiar. That's the reason why I went overseas, subconsciously and unconsciously. I went overseas because that's something new that I couldn't find myself being around the same thing because I had conditioned myself to a particular version of myself and particular morals and beliefs and values, and which didn't fit me, and it wouldn't have gotten me to this place that I am in now. I would never have gotten to my purpose. I would never have found it if I had remained there. Yeah. And I know that's like no one's fault. It's like I want to manage how I can be myself in that familiar environment, but as me, not as the version of me that doesn't get to my purpose. I want to get to my purpose and be able to also be around the circle of friends that I've grown up with and my family and just the way I am.
So that's like kind of the trick or the challenge, is to be able to like reintegrate yourself into a familiar environment, even if you're different.
Yeah. I mean, if it's your family, like we're going to have to see family again eventually. You know, we're going to have to, there's always going to be a birthday, like we're going tomorrow, a family birthday, where there are things, there are going to be dinners, there's going to be celebrations, there's going to be weddings, there's going to be occasions. So you're going to have to find a way to be that version of yourself in it and be okay with maybe someone asking a question.
Oh God, we were talking about authenticity the other day.
We were.
And what is authenticity? And it's we're constantly sort of challenging our own thoughts and our own beliefs about certain things, because we love the word authenticity.
Oh, I love it.
And we've had an idea of authenticity, but it's like, what actually is authenticity? Yeah. You know, is it you being able to identify what is true for you and then acting in accordance with that truth, you know? Or is it identifying what's true and expressing that truth?
And then it's like, what is that truth? Is it the new truth that you found, or is it the old truth?
Well, because this is what we were talking about. So we were saying with authenticity that if you know how if you're in a social situation with one person, then you are in a particular way with them. You present yourself in a particular way with them.
Yep.
Maybe you have a specific relationship with them. They have a particular purpose in your life. So you kind of match yourself to that vibe with them. And maybe it's just more conducive to a better social interaction. But with another person, they serve a different role in your life. So you'll be different with them. For example, I'll be a different way with my mum than I'll be with your mum.
Sure.
And so what we were talking about with authenticity, so it's like if you have a belief in, if you see yourself a certain way, if you see the world a certain way, if you have certain beliefs, then the way that you present yourself should be in accordance with those, right? So if you're having a social interaction with somebody, are you being inauthentic if you present yourself one way to somebody else than you do with another person? So because I'm one way with my mum and I'm a different way with your mum, is one way me being authentic and another way me being inauthentic. So that's...
What did we come to? What was the conclusion?
Oh, let's talk about it now.
I know, I forgot. Because we came to some sort of conclusion.
Well, yeah, we just talk through it. Like, so that's what I was saying. I was confused in talking about authenticity because up until at least that point, I'd say to be authentic is no matter what social situation you're in, you present the same version of yourself. But what happens then is that with one person, so with mum, because I have the history with her, we have a certain relationship dynamic, we can have a very intense argument, but also move on from it very quickly. Yeah. So if I was to convey information or express myself in that way with her, it's okay. But if I was to do that with your mum, it's going to be a very different story. Sure. So I need to adapt the way that I communicate and express myself with your mum. So because I present myself in that particular way, I present myself differently in those situations, does that mean I'm being inauthentic to either my mum or to your mum?
Okay. No, because I've remembered now what I was talking about. Because our energies are different, you're not going to yell at my mum. You probably wouldn't, with that same fire, you're not going to yell at her for multiple reasons, but also you can sense her energy, that she's more of an emotional, she probably doesn't handle yelling well, especially from a stranger. Not a stranger, obviously.
I'm a stranger.
Well, I'm just saying, not a stranger.
3 years and still strangers.
But I think we came to the conclusion that it's matching your energy with someone when you're with them. Not changing your information, but changing the way you present that information.
Yeah.
That's what it was sort of.
I think that's sort of, because the reason I bring this up is because in line with, okay, you've changed because you've spent time away from a group and now you've got to try and figure out how to reintegrate yourself back into that group and still be yourself. So that's why I bring this up.
Sure. Okay.
So we're talking about like authenticity. So because you've changed, you don't have to be the exact same, like you don't have to stay completely physically true to that belief. So for example, if you've spent time away and you've changed and you've learnt something and you've learnt a particular way of being or expressing yourself that really works for you, then you don't come back into a situation and then just blatantly assert that on everybody, because that's going to rub some people up the wrong way. Some people love it and some people will hate it. So that does an injustice to what it is that you actually stand for, because one person's getting the message but another person isn't. And so I think we're talking about authenticity and in how you express yourself. If you have, like I said, if you have a belief or if you subscribe to a philosophy or you have your own foundation or idea about something, it's your ability to articulate that idea, express that idea. So as long as you hold yourself principled to certain ideas that you believe to be true, and you stay true to those principles, as long as you stay true to those principles and you can communicate from that foundation, you can express yourself differently with every different person. Because that's the thing. If you have nothing that's sort of supporting you, then you're kind of not going to have any authenticity from which to support yourself with.
No, and that's why we need to know thyself. That know thyself has been on my mind for the last few weeks and has probably helped me, and I've actually gotten experience, and there has been a quietening with me and like my social circle, or like with we've distanced, and it's that time again, that time of understanding what authenticity is. And then as soon as I figure something, or I'll come to some sort of conclusion, someone messages me, or someone calls me, or someone random messages, and that's my test, that's my challenge. Okay, now I've understood this up to this point, I get it now, how can I apply it? And then this situation comes to me. So you being 25 and you wanting to know your purpose, if you put something out there, if you put a message, I want to learn more about what it is that I'm meant to do, and something I'm like, if you just put that message out there, guaranteed the universe is going to put something in front of you. It's going to put you a book in front of you, or someone might say something, or you might have an interaction at work. Like nearly like 99.99999% of the time, if not 100% of the time, I'm actually going to say 100. Every single time you ask for something, you will get it, whether that's positive or negative. If you are scared of something, then, or it's another thing, you're putting the fear out there, that fear is going to come back to you.
Is that also how you perceive the situation too? So like if you ask, let's say, okay, I've settled on something now, I'm ready, I need experience, I need to learn more about this something or other. You can go forth and still experience what you were going to experience anyway, but it's because you've alerted that, you've created that awareness by asking the question, you've switched the awareness to that outcome. And so you might go about the next day, for example, and experience that day exactly how you were always going to experience it. But now that you've asked the question and you've got the mindset, the awareness for it, you'll notice something. So it's not necessarily that something's going to come out of nowhere and smack you in the face where it wouldn't have been there otherwise.
But you still have free will. So you have free will to either ask for something and it'll happen quicker, rather than wait and for it to happen over and over and over and over again for you to then get it.
Yeah.
So with you choosing with your own free will to ask the question, to seek, to do the work, to asking the right question and what you want, and putting that out into the universe, then the first time it comes to you, you'll be like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
It's come to me. I've learnt, now I can ask for something else.
Well, that's the awareness, though.
That's that rhythm that you get with the life and the universe, and you become one with, this is what I need, and I'm ready to receive it. And
well, because I feel like if you're asking those questions and you're putting your mindset towards this is what I want to do, then like I said, everything that's in your environment right now, if you become attuned or you put your intention behind a certain idea, then those things that are in your environment that are there to support you in achieving that intention, they're going to stand out to you more.
Yeah.
So they would always have been there potentially, but now you changed your mindset and your awareness. I'm just presenting a different.
Because I understand that too. So it could already be happening, and now that you're attuned to it, you'll be like, oh, it's been happening for like 10 years.
Yeah.
This message has been coming to me for 10 years.
Like, so for example, I could say, okay, I just want a new job. I want to do something different. I just want to learn something new. That job exists.
Yes.
Or it will exist because I'm going to create it. Mm-hmm. But my ability to create it exists.
Yes.
But because I'm being so vague and general and I'm not really that into the thing, I'm just like, I'm so unsatisfied with where I'm at right now. I just want to go forth and do something that's going to make me feel good. But once you then start to get more specific and have a little bit of an intention and a bit of drive to it, you might go, I'm actually really interested in money. I actually really enjoy structuring my money and creating a budget and playing around with finances. I'm actually interested in learning a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
So then you start to notice the resources you might have and whether you have books on finance or you've got the internet. Maybe you go on the internet and look something up, or you go to the library. These resources were always there, but it wasn't until you said, this is actually what I might do. And then that might then cascade into a job in finance or whatever. And then that way, so because you've actually got a little bit of drive and a little bit of motivation or inspiration behind an idea or behind a certain course of action, then you will start to notice where that actually has always existed in your life. And you can start to get creative with it and utilize it so that you can go forth and manifest something that was always there for you to manifest.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm with that.
Because I'm just like, just talking about it and presenting it because, you definitely look at it at the point of view that it is given to you. And I think...
Well, okay, we were talking about purpose and divine timing, right? A few episodes ago, or just in general, we always talk about it. And the fact that we have a purpose and we're always given these messages. And they all think that we will always be put on this path and we will always be given the resources or the messages to do a certain thing or move us in this sort of direction. And that's what we agreed on, yeah? So we have a specific path and purpose here in this life and in this body. And essentially all those resources are already available to us, whereas we just have to be conscious and aware of them. So the thing is, with free will, you can ask for those things sooner. If you're more aware, like now that I'm so much more aware than I was a year ago, I know exactly what I need. I need this, this, and this, and I know that it's going to take a little bit of time to get this one, but that's okay because I got this.
Yeah.
And you become more aware of things, and instead of it taking like another 10 years or 20 years, it might actually take 2 years. Because I'm more conscious of making my decisions, and you make more of an impact that way, and then you'll be able to do more and create more impact.
Is that because you've identified where you want to go? So all of a sudden, the things that are in your immediate environment you start to notice what value they can provide towards you achieving that goal.
Because some people might be like, I'm really good at this, and they fight with their purpose. They're like, oh, but I don't really think that I'm going to be good at it, or they don't choose it. And like, I want to do something else because that's not for me. I'm always being pushed in that direction, which is like the road that you're supposed to go, that they reject it. And it happens a lot. And it's like you reject the idea of actually going forth, and you think that there's something else out there. Maybe it's because you don't feel worthy. Maybe it doesn't matter what reason. There's a reason why you're not going on that path. And you're choosing your free will. You're choosing not to go on that. Of course, it's going to take longer because you've got to go all the way around, and then start again, kind of thing. When you're at a certain age, like, oh.
Does that assume that you're going to get somewhere no matter what in the end?
Well, that's what we agreed, didn't we? When we said we have to, because we have certain traits, skills, and abilities. So yes, but we still choose how that unfolds.
Yeah.
So yes, I can be a healer. I am a healer, but how much of a healer do I want to improve, or do I just want to stay here?
Yeah.
That's what I have control over.
Yeah.
I can choose how experienced I am, or how little experience. How if I just want to play it safe and maybe have 1 or 2 clients a month, and then just settle for the amount of money, or do I just go, this is the lifestyle that I want. I believe that I can have it, even though it is nothing like the people around me have. I don't even know what it feels like. I don't know I just know what it looks like. And I want it. I believe that I have that dream house exists. I believe that lifestyle exists. I want to be able to afford Valentino, or I want to be able to afford, like, whatever it is.
I don't know what that is.
Oh my God.
It's Valentino.
It's a designer, honey.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Jesus Christ. This is what we're talking about. The 4 years is a long...
I think also your enjoyment of fashion probably plays a role. I don't really care so much.
Probably, but... Okay, I'm not going to get on that. It's just going to make me upset.
Like, I think this is your grey shirt.
Is it?
I think it was in my part of the wardrobe, but I don't own a grey shirt
quite
like this.
feminine, because the shoulders are quite high.
I thought it was a male top, but anyway. Sorry, we digress.
Yeah, so that's the lifestyle I want. Why not go for it? But the thing is, what I'm aware of I've never experienced that. I know that it's going to be a process, but I'd rather spend my time getting better and better and better and mastering my skills and abilities to that point, rather than settling for maybe just for Kmart for the rest of my life, because it doesn't fit in with what I enjoy and what I'm attracted to.
Okay, well let's go quite deep for a second.
Sure.
And it's going to sort of re-dig up the conversation that we had on divine timing and free will. I believe that your soul has a purpose here, that your soul manifests your physical form. And I believe that it's the purpose of the soul that ultimately drives the events that occur in your life, or what happens in your life, because your soul needs to experience, it needs to learn lessons. And so that's why you're living the existence that you're living right now, and you're experiencing what you're experiencing right now, because your soul needs it.
Sure.
It's not about what you're going through humanly, it's about what your soul can glean from the situation that you're in. So if you're, say, down here to be a healer, and sorry, let me just backpedal just a sec. So, when you pass away, when it's time for you to leave this earth humanly, it's because your soul has either learnt the lesson, or it's got all it's going to be able to get from this existence. So that's when it's time for you to leave, and you pass away and you move on, and that's one of my beliefs.
Sure.
So that being the case, if you're meant to be a healer, and that's one of your soul's purpose, if you become a healer like at the end of your life and then you die, was it your soul's purpose to be a healer, as opposed to what happened if you learnt that you wanted to be a healer and you wanted to heal, and you did it when you were 20, and then you had a whole life of being in what it was that you wanted to do and what the soul was here to learn, and develop it and create something for yourself. So in those situations, it was your purpose to be a healer. But one person died when they discovered they wanted to be a healer, versus the other person started their life knowing they wanted to be a healer.
The two people made different decisions.
Well, that's right. So were both of them going to get to be healers? Is it because one got there sooner, they got to be a healer and experience healing for longer, and because it was just the other natural course of their life has led them to finally want to be a healer at the end, and then they died because their purpose was to become a healer? Does that make sense? Am I making any sense with that?
It depends what their life was filled with. If their life was filled with, being stopping every time the opportunity came, feeling unworthy, not really, not, the decisions that you make when things are coming to you. I want to know what happened in that person's life to then reach. Maybe their purpose wasn't to be a healer. Maybe that was just because purpose isn't necessarily a career. Purpose is... Yeah,
I'm just using it for lack of a better way.
I know what you mean, yeah. But maybe that's for their next life.
Yeah.
They've learnt what they've needed to learn in their period of life. So that's their experience, like we were talking about.
So maybe the person that was 20 went through that experience and they died in the previous life at the
Something
end.
like
so
that.
they start this life. That's true, right?
There's infinite possibilities to these scenarios.
Because if you're
look
looking
how many people are on Earth right now.
Yeah.
And every life is unique. Every brain is unique. Every person is made up differently, and of the same stuff, but differently. They've got different ingredients?
Sure.
So, of course, everyone's going to have a unique experience, but we also have free will to choose. If I choose not to do this and I'm going to go back to the cafe and just work for the rest of my life, how would that affect us right now, right? Well, you would be like, what are you doing? We'd probably break up because you want more. You know what I mean? Like, it might lead to that. It might lead to us breaking up because that's not going to fulfill me. I'm settling for something that doesn't actually bring me joy, but it just gives me like a monthly or weekly paycheck.
Sure.
So for you, if your purpose or if your desire is to have money and financial wealth and learn about it, you're going to want more of it so you can know what you want to do with it. You're not going to get that from me,
right? Unless
you really love me and I'm everything for you.
Well, that would go to, because I also believe if we're going to go down on this sort of tangent now.
I don't know how long we've been talking about.
Oh, that's just usually is what happens. We start off when we talk about one thing, go down a million different rabbit holes. I think with relationships, right? So we're just going down to like just following that. Maybe a break up with you, maybe not. Who knows? What purpose are you serving in my life?
Exactly.
Like in that sort of situation, that would suggest that I'm looking for a partner who's going to continue to benefit and to grow my bank account, or will continue to have me in a situation, or have the both of us in a situation where we are increasing the amount of money or amount of financial wealth that we've got.
It depends what you value in a relationship.
Well, that's what I mean, though. So each relationship you have serves a purpose. So if I'm in this relationship because I see it, being of financial benefit to me in the future, then yeah, I mean, if you backpedal and you go back to working at the cafe full time, then that's not exactly going to take a step in that direction. So then it might be time for it to come to an end.
Yeah.
And that would be the end of that relationship because it's no longer serving the purpose I'd identified for it to serve. But I don't. No, I mean, that's not happening because this relationship isn't about finances.
No.
One of the things I really identified and actually understood this week, I was listening to another podcast and they brought it up in passing and I'm like, holy crap, no, I actually really understand this now. And I understand it from our perspective and the situation that we're in. And that is that we have been conditioned by what we've gone through and what we've experienced and what has the framework that we've grown up in. So I'll explain what I mean. We're obviously trying to start something completely new. We're wanting to change our lives, right? We're wanting to create something that is just beneficial for us and beneficial for society and how we can serve. So we're looking to break out of the employee sort of role and start something for us that is going to be beneficial for hopefully as many people as possible, including us. But that requires us stepping outside of conditioning. And that's something that we've had to grapple with. I think you've grappled, obviously you're older than me, so you've grappled with it for longer, but it was something that when I heard this, I'm like, oh my God, it really makes sense, right? And I'm talking about our education and our education system and the way that how school is structured and how that has ingrained in us a particular way of looking at things and how it's trained us to be a certain way. Not necessarily in what we've learned and what's been taught in school. Obviously, what you get taught in school shapes your beliefs for a certain period of time until something comes along that shakes you away from it. Yeah. But the whole thing is with what we're doing and being entrepreneurial and trying to create your own job and creating in general. Yeah. You need to step outside of the structure of what's normal, because when you're creating something, that inevitably is change. You're either adapting something that already exists or changing something that already exists, or you're making something that didn't exist.
So it's creating something out of nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're looking to create, you actually have to get outside of the system that you're living in order to do that and get into that space. In my opinion, we've been trained out of that. The way that we are taught in school is we're going to teach you content, but then we're going to test you on that content. And so you're going to be right or you're going to be wrong in how you answer that test. And you pass or you fail. There's no real middle ground where, obviously in early school, you don't have the brain capacity to be able to have a debate about a particular topic, right?
Could you imagine you having this brain at like age 7? Oh my God.
Barely sufferable now. It was so insufferable back then. So we're raised kind of on this idea that you're right or you're wrong. So, and you're also in the structure and the framework of school is that you've got a teacher there to tell you what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
So you've constantly got somebody there teaching you that there is one way of doing something and there's a way of not doing something. And one of those is right and one of those is wrong. So no matter what, you've always got someone that's going to be there to guide you to make the right, quote unquote, right decision. And if you do a test, you either get the answer right or you get it wrong. There's not a grey area that you flesh out. You don't tease out ideas in school. And for me, it was the same experience in university. I went through school with that idea of there's right, there's wrong, there's pass, there's fail.
Yeah.
I've got someone there that tells me what's right and what's wrong. Yeah. And it was the same thing in uni. To me, I never really feel like it was in a particular situation where it was like, we're going to put an idea on the floor and we're going to pick it apart. There was none of that. It was like, this is what, the experience has shown us and this is what we've sort of taken from it. And then that's what we then were tested on. And so it was still a right or a wrong.
Yeah.
It creates this idea that when you go out into the real world, it does. It creates. I got a lot of things right, so I'm smart. I'm book smart. Yeah. I got a lot of things wrong. I'm dumb. Yeah. And so it creates this entire way of looking at the world around you, in that there's a right way of doing something and there's a wrong way of doing something. You also get accustomed to the idea of there being someone that is superior to you telling you what's right and wrong, and if you get something wrong, they'll tell you that it's wrong.
And that's why we wait for permission to do things.
Yeah, well, that's
because
right.
We want permission. It was like, oh, well, I really want to start this business. It's like I was waiting for permission for someone to say, you're allowed to do this. Yep, you are now ready to do this. Here you go. Yep, you passed.
And this is the right thing to do.
And now you can start an ad here.
Yeah.
Yes, well done.
And it's like, and how are you going to start an ad here? Yeah. And I'm going to give you a test, and if you pass the test, then you are ready to go.
I would just keep failing and failing and failing.
But that's the thing, we come out into this world where you have to be independent. You don't have someone that's there with you telling you that's the wrong thing to do or that's the right thing to do. And you're left with this idea, with this conditioning that there's a right way to do something and there's a wrong way to do something. And you've got to try and really quickly establish what's right and what's wrong. And then you try and implement it and it doesn't work how you saw it to work. And so you must have got it wrong. So very quickly you give up, and it gets so overwhelming because you don't necessarily have someone there that's superior that's going to say, nah, that's the right way of doing it, that's the wrong way. And when you're trying to create something from scratch or create something different, you haven't been trained to look for those gaps. You've been trained that this is the information that we have, and so there's either a right way to analyze this information and there's a wrong way. Yeah. There's not hey, maybe there's a different way that we can come at this.
No, there's no maybe.
No,
there's never a maybe.
I hope I'm getting this, but I hope this makes sense. But it is black and white. There's not a lot of grey area. Yeah. And it's because of that structure, the way that we're tested. We learn information so that we can pass a test.
How has that affected you and learning now? Like how has that impacted you at the moment? Is there anything that are there any alarm bells or triggers from that?
I get really nervous when it comes to stepping into something different, something new. Like I was saying earlier, I like the sound of so many ideas. I like coming up with ideas and expressing things. I like being able to, if I have the capacity, I like to change and add something to the literature or add something to whatever it is. If I'm having a conversation, then I want to get somewhere with the conversation. And so add something, right? And I'm confident when I'm in an area that I'm confident in my ability to do something. That's sort of one thing. But we're stepping into something completely different, right? We both want to go in this direction, but we've never done it before, and we don't have someone there necessarily to tell us the right way of doing it. And so that gets really overwhelming because it's like, I don't know what's right and what's wrong here. And it's difficult to be confident stepping into that grey area because I've never been trained in how to do it. And so that's, I think, where that unconscious conditioning sort of comes up a little bit. And it doesn't necessarily manifest itself in me saying, no, we're going to stop. We're not going to do it now because I'm not comfortable. It's just an underlying feeling of uneasiness.
Yeah.
Or discomfort.
See, for me, because you passed in school, like you got good grades. I didn't get good grades. Like I did and I didn't. I don't remember what I got good grades on because I was literally doing things by the book and answering exactly what that was written as my answer. And then I got it right. So I didn't actually learn anything from it. They were like, all the answers are in the book. All the answers are here. You don't really have to think for yourself.
Yeah.
Well, that's how I felt anyway. Or when we did have to think for ourselves, eventually when you got to like year 11 and 12, when you had to write or create an idea of an essay or something, I'm like, I had no idea how to do it because they were telling me the information like throughout my whole schooling.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, why am I now learning how to think for myself when I don't even know how to do that?
Yeah, exactly. Because there's a right and there's a wrong.
Yeah. So I'm like, but what if I write about this and it's wrong? Or what if it's right? And I'm like, I don't know what's right and I don't know what's wrong. And I ended up actually not doing projects because I was that overwhelmed and freaked out. Like, and this was from primary school onward. Like, this wasn't just a high school thing. This was from primary school. I remember being so terrified to get things wrong that I just didn't even do them, which was wrong anyway, because I got told off and called stupid or lazy, or I was procrastinating. I actually got called a procrastinator in high school in about year 8. And I was like, of course I'm a procrastinator. I'm creative, and you're telling me something that's this and or this. I want to go over here.
Yeah.
Like I want to explore this area, but you're telling me I'm not allowed to.
And that's what's really difficult about the way that it's set up, is that it's black and white, and you're providing an answer that there's an expected answer. There is a correct answer that you have to provide. Yeah. And if you try to dally outside of that, then you're going to be wrong no matter what, because you haven't provided the answer that's expected of you.
Because that, like, coming to ENERHIA and building it, like, there were so many times I'm like, I might as well just not fucking do this, because I'm getting it wrong. You know, people are telling me, even like the people around me are telling me, I'll do it this way, I'll do it this way. And I do it and it doesn't work. And then I do something else, the other thing, and it doesn't work. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm just getting it wrong all the time. Instead of saying, okay, what way do I want to do it?
Yeah.
What way would work? Or what do I want to try? Even if it doesn't work, I'll be okay with, but I've explored an idea. And we've worked through that over the last week.
Yeah, well, that's what we're like. That's what experience outside of that system hopefully helps to nurture in you. But when you're in that system, you don't have any lateral room to be able to explore critically different ideas.
Do you reckon that's why the 20s are so hard for
potentially?
people?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
We're just so conditioned that there's a right way and a wrong way, that because schooling's been around for how long? When we are 20 and we are ready to make a career, build a career, it's like, it's so stressful that it's like, do I do this or I'll just stay miserable because this is what I'm supposed to do? I'm earning a lot of money. I hate my job, but I'm earning a lot of money. And that's really respectable.
But here's the thing too, though, right, is that when you come out of school, because you're trained essentially to accept the information it's been given to you because the person giving you that information knows more about it than you do. So you just, I guess, accept the idea that they know more than you.
Yeah.
And so if they tell you something, then that must be the way that it is. And then if they ask you a question and say, okay, well, what's this? Then you remember, because they've taught you that that's the way it is. And so that's the right answer. So you get trained and conditioned into thinking that someone else has the answers, and that there is a right answer and there is a wrong answer. And you don't have to necessarily take any responsibility, because there's someone superior to you that's watching over you. Yeah. And so if you get something wrong, then you can blame the teacher for not teaching you properly. Yeah. You know, you don't really have to take responsibility.
Yeah.
And when you come out of school, that teacher-student relationship can get transferred into an employer-employee relationship. Because when you're an employee, you're in a similar situation in that you're learning how to do the job, or what the job entails. And you've got an employer there that's there to train you up in the skills that you need to do the job successfully.
And then you're doing it.
Yeah. And then if you stuff up, or if something happens, then the employer is the one ultimately
that says you're wrong.
That says it's the wrong way of doing it, or they're the ones that are in that position of superiority that kind of have to look at themselves, and maybe they made a mistake in the information they provided you, and that's why you are in that situation, or
but
made that mistake
yourself. They very rarely do that. In the jobs that I've had and the ideas that I've come up to them with, they're like, no, you're just a casual employee. That doesn't matter. Well, leave it. They're not going to do anything about it, actually, was probably the most common thing. It's management. They get to do whatever they want. And they just walk around doing nothing and just walking around, just looking like they know what they're doing. But that was my experience. Being at the bottom and seeing what it was like at the top, I'm like, I know what kind of manager and boss I want to be. So I was hoping in every job that I went to, I would actually be like, well, that I've actually had a really good manager. But I can't say that about a lot of them. If anything, I can probably say that about one, maybe two.
Yeah.
If that. One definitely, but maybe another one. Or they had the potential and they, but I'm like, okay, I know now, after all those years of all those jobs that I went to, I was disrespected a lot as a casual worker, and I'm like, I'm working for you. Yeah. You want to please me. You want to make sure that I'm safe, that I'm doing the job right, and you want to respect me because I can leave. I can talk about you. I can say anything I want outside of it and destroy your company, or, you've got to be careful. Hey, I've always wanted, I want to make sure that when I am a boss, if that's even possible, because at that point I was like, I couldn't be a boss, someone else is a boss, because I'm always a student, I am always wrong, or it goes back to all that.
This is what's really funny just on that, right? Is that mindset that you are sort of brought up and were raised to think that you want to have your own company, you want to be your own boss, like that. It's a good thing to be able to do that, but we're not trained, we're not given the skills from an early age that are critical to develop in order to actually get to that point where you're your own boss. And that's what's really frustrating. We're conditioned to be good employees. And that might be controversial. It's not everyone's situation.
No.
But in order to put yourself in a situation where you are your own boss, when you're starting up your own company, you have to create something. You have to bring something to the table that has never been brought to the table before. And we're not taught how to critically think, critically appraise. We're not taught how to think laterally, look at things from a different angle. We have to break outside that black and white, right, wrong, pass, fail conditioning that we've had all through our educational life, from primary school, high school, university, in order to actually create something different and put ourselves in that situation that we've wanted to get to. Because that's what it's frustrating trying to fight that conditioning and break free of that conditioning. We're not taught that. We're not taught how to think critically in school. We're taught instead how to follow orders.
Yeah. That's what there's a change happening at the moment anyway. Like, entrepreneurship is massive at the moment, and it's been happening for a couple of years, at least a couple of years.
Well, it's not that it's massive at the moment. It's just that there's different avenues now.
We have the internet. People want to be entrepreneurs. People want to create their own jobs, but this is what's stopping them. This process, this conditioning, like, it stopped me. I could have done a lot of things, but it stopped me. I stopped every time because I was like, I'm wrong, because that was just what I was told. And being the youngest as well, like, I'm wrong, but I obviously didn't have the experience that they had. So even that in itself, I'm going to take that with me my whole life. No matter how old I am, I'm always going to think that I'm too young, always. Even if I'm 80, I'll probably think I'm too young for some reason. So it's that mindset that I'm cracking open and being like, I want to explore something else. I want to explore a different mindset because this doesn't work for me. I don't want to stop every time I get inspiration. I don't want to stop every time I have a really creative idea, or about even just a picture on the wall. It doesn't even have to be anything like life-changing for someone, or a business idea. Even just like, I have an idea of an art piece and I want to do it. Most of the time I stop. I say no, I can't do it because I'm not an artist. Someone else is an artist. Those that have 20 years experience. I'm like, well, they started somewhere, didn't they? So I have to go through this conversation. They had to start somewhere. They just tried and they just continued to do it. They continued every single day to draw or to create.
That's what the beautiful thing about having a little hobby where you create is, because for that instance, you're out of that. No one's telling you what to do. No one's telling you that there's a right way to draw this picture or to write this poem or whatever. You are just with yourself, creating something, generating something that wasn't there before. And that's what's so crucial about having some kind of creative outlet, so that you can be in charge and in control of birthing something.
The thing is, we need it. Like we're always, I feel like, so my client as well, she's amazing, but she was telling me that, because we were talking about meditation and how we stop and, you know, sit there, and she was like, I just can't do it. But because my thoughts keep coming up and I'm triggered, and I'm like, yeah, I feel that, I can, you know, but it takes practice, you got to keep doing it. But it depends what your journey is and what you like doing. If it's really painful, don't do it. If it's so traumatic. She says, when I'm creating my alcohol links, that's when I'm with myself and when everything disappears.
Yeah.
And because you're tapping into that infinite potential, nothing matters here. Or your experience or your situation doesn't matter. It's you are creating. You're creating something new. Yeah. So you're tapping into that. And the more you connect with that, the more your art evolves. Yeah. And the better you get, and the more you master it.
I completely relate to that. When I'm trying to meditate, it's just everything's everywhere. Yeah. My thoughts organize when I'm writing.
There you go.
Because you know how you see your thoughts? I like read mine.
Sure.
So when it comes to visualizing, it's like I'm visualizing because I'm reading words that formulate in my brain, and I'm generating the image the same way I generate an image if I was reading a book.
Yeah.
So when my thoughts organize is when I'm writing. Is when they sort of come and line up like that.
Whatever works for you, as long as you can connect with that kind of creativity. Because meditation works for some people. It doesn't work for me all the time. I got to be in the mood for it. But at the moment, my meditation is breathing, just focusing on my breath, because I want to be able to focus on what I'm doing. So for me, focusing on my breathing and seeing where it's going and connecting with my body and being at one with myself, I then can take that with me for the rest of the day. That's my meditation. It's not necessarily stopping and trying to control my thoughts and seeing them pass, because that actually happens throughout the entire day. I have a thought, I let it pass. I have a thought, I let it pass. I have a thought, let it pass. Like it. That's just a habit for me now. I'm like, okay, not cancel. I don't want that thought. You know, it's my new thing. If I have a bad thought or if I say something, cancel. No, I didn't mean it. I actually don't want to think like that anymore. I don't want to say that kind of stuff anymore. And then I'll replace it with something more positive. You know, I'm actually grateful for this, or whatever it needs. Like, I'm really trying to make that a conscious effort so I can retrain my mindset and my brain and my body and my conditioning.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot.
Oh, it is. No, it's so true though. It's funny that yes, you can learn this stuff at any age. You can think this way at any sort of age. It's not necessarily specific to your 20s, but it's funny how I learned these lessons in my 20s. But it's from looking back and reflecting on the experiences that I have had. And this, like I said, I don't want to generalize. I know that I'm probably using relatively general language with this stuff, but I'm not. I'm explaining the conclusions that I've come to based on the experience that I've had. And so that to me is it's where I'm at in my mid-20s at the moment. I'm just trying to figure out where I've come from and why I am where I am right now. And
I would love to have this same conversation in like 10 years time.
Oh, yeah.
Or even re-listen to this and see what we're thinking.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, you just don't know anything.
Yeah.
You're so young.
And then the person 10 years later,
and then 10 years later,
the same thing. Yeah. But it's I look at where you are, and I hope that by the time I'm, you know, in my late 20s, that I've discovered my passion, and I'm wanting to get somewhere specific with it. So at the moment, I'm still piecing things together.
You're allowed to be. Yeah. You got to be okay with that. That's probably if I could give any advice, being at the end of my 20s. Not that I'm like a wise owl or anything, because I have a long way to go. But yeah, like just being aware and conscious of of things that are happening around you. Even your thoughts, just a simple thought, and where it could lead you. Because one thought could take you this way and another thought could take you that way.
Yeah.
And being aware, you know exactly which one to take.
I guess the closing thought is that there's so much to comprehend. There's so much that is always happening at any given point in time. And the good thing about being 20, I guess, is that you're mature enough to be able to understand that there's a lot to life. Life is not black and white, no matter what you've been taught, no matter what you've been conditioned to think. There is not one size fits all. There is not one idea that flows on. There's no logic that flows on from one specific idea that explains everything.
Oh, there's infinite possibility.
The 20th century was a fantastic explanation of all that, and an exploration of what that way of thinking does. So I'm definitely trying to figure out, there's so many different things out there, and trying to make sense of it. And it's amazing to see you who have made sense of a few things and are able to actually hone that into a career path. It's really exciting.
It is. And the thing is, it's just for me not to ultimately fuck it up.
There's no right, there's no wrong way of doing it. Well, that's it.
You know, like, now that I have it and I know what it feels like, I've wanted this for so long. I don't even think I think I've just like skimmed the surface. Like, I'm just at the doorway of what I'm about to experience. I don't think.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I don't have anything yet that you don't have. Like, honestly, like, yes, I know my direction, but I still have no idea what is for me in the 30s. You know, even saying that is really obscure.
It's exciting.
It is.
Where's the rest of our 20s taking us, and what's beyond that? It's really exciting. But I think we'll wrap it up there because we've been talking for long enough. I hope we actually got somewhere. We discussed a lot, but no, like, thank you for sitting down and sharing this time with me, Yuj.
Well, thank you, Lohan.